Hey there and welcome. In the world we live in today, it's just so connected, right? Communicating with people from different cultures isn't just a nice to have skill anymore. It's everything. We're doing it all the time, online, in our neighborhoods. So the big question is, how do we get good at it? That's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Have you ever had that moment? You're talking to someone, maybe a coworker, a new neighbor, and you just get this feeling like you're completely missing each other? You're technically speaking the same language, but it feels like you're on different planets. Yeah, that feeling of being totally lost in translation, that's what we're jumping into.
And that's why we're here. Our mission today is to give you a brand new map, something to help you see the whole landscape of cultural differences. And, just as important, we're going to give you a better toolkit, the right language to navigate that landscape with real confidence and respect. Basically, this is your guide to becoming a communication superstar.
All right, let's get into it. Our map, it has a fancy name, the Developmental Model of Intercultural Sensitivity. Let's just call it the DMIS, okay? It was developed by a guy named Dr. Milton Bennett, and it's this really fantastic framework for understanding how we grow, how our ability to get and interact with cultural differences actually develops over time.
So this whole journey is broken down into 6 stages. And you can think of these 6 stages as being split into 2 big halves. The first half, denial, defense, and minimization, that's what we call the ethnocentric stages. Basically, it's when our own culture is the center of our universe. Then, the second half, acceptance, adaptation, and integration, those are the ethno-relative stages. That's where the big shift happens, and we start to see our culture as just one of many ways of looking at the world. Okay, so let's dig into that first half, the ethnocentric stages. You can almost think of this as the default setting for a lot of people. It's where we don't even realize we're doing it, but we're using our own cultural background as the yardstick for everything, for what's normal, what's right, what makes sense.
And the starting line for this journey is a stage called denial, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. Here, cultural differences are, well, they're either totally invisible, or you just kind of brush them off as not being a big deal. And it's important to say, this isn't usually coming from a bad place. It often just happens when people are a bit isolated and haven't really been exposed to a lot of different ways of living. And this quote just nails the mindset, doesn't it? When you hear all people are the same, it sounds nice and inclusive on the surface. But from the denial stage, there's a silent part to that sentence. It's really saying, all people are the same as me. It's like wearing blinders to all the fascinating, complex differences that actually make our world so interesting. Okay, from denial, we often slide into the next stage, defense. Now, here's the change. You do see the differences. You can't miss them, but you see them as a threat. And right away, that creates this us versus them feeling. It's all about digging in your heels, protecting your own way of life, and trying to prove that your culture has got it right. Yep, my culture is the best. That pretty much says it all. Everything becomes a competition. And what's really fascinating is that this can work in reverse, too. You sometimes see people putting another culture up on a pedestal while being super critical of their own. But either way you slice it, it's the same polarized us against them mindset. All right, the last stop in the ethnocentric zone is minimization. And this one's a little tricky because it really feels like progress. At this stage, you see the surface level stuff. Different holidays, different food, different music. But the core belief is that underneath all that, deep down, we're all the same. And here's the catch. While that sounds so open-minded, it's still ethnocentric. Why? Because that definition of sameness is almost always based on your own cultural values. You're basically saying, we're all the same because you're all like me deep down. It papers over the really deep, important differences in how people think and communicate. Okay. Get ready, because now we hit the major turning point. We are crossing the line into the ethno-relative stages. This is a massive mindset shift. You go from seeing your culture as the one and only reality to seeing it as one reality among many equals. This right here is where the real magic of intercultural understanding starts to happen. And our first stop in this new world is acceptance. This is huge. It's where you don't just see differences, you actually start to appreciate them as meaningful. You get that other ways of looking at the world are completely valid. We're not just talking about tolerating differences here. This is a deep, genuine respect and a real curiosity. You finally see that other cultures are every bit as complex and rich as yours. And this is the thought that changes everything. Think about it. You stop seeing a behavior that's new to you and immediately thinking, that's weird. Instead, you start thinking, Okay, I wonder why they do that. What's the context here? You're swapping out judgment for curiosity. That's a game changer. So once you're living in acceptance, the next stage is adaptation. This is where knowledge turns into action. It's one thing to understand another culture's point of view. It's another thing entirely to be able to actually change your own behavior, to shift your communication style so you can connect better within that different context. It's about building skills. This is what real intercultural skill looks like. And let's be clear, this is not about being fake or losing yourself. It's the exact opposite. It's about adding more tools to your belt. Think of a musician who can play classical, jazz, and rock. They're still the same musician, they just have a bigger range. You learn when to be direct, when to be more subtle. You adapt. And that brings us to the final stage on our map, integration. Now, this stage is pretty advanced. It's often found in people who've really lived it. Maybe they grew up bicultural, or they've spent huge chunks of their lives living in another country. For them, their identity isn't just locked into one culture anymore.
Someone at this stage is, well, they're fluent. They can move between different cultural mindsets almost without thinking. They see themselves as living in that space between cultures, and they can code switch, not just their words or actions, but their entire perspective on the world. It's a genuinely multicultural way of being.
Okay, so there you have it. That's our map. And really, for all of us who want to be better communicators, the goal is to keep moving towards adaptation and integration. But what good is a map if you don't have the right tools for the journey, right? And the single most powerful, most important tool we have is our language. So let's pop open that communication toolkit. What we're talking about here is inclusive language. And I know some people hear that and immediately think of political correctness or some kind of restrictive rule book. But that's not it at all. This is simply about being more precise, more accurate, and frankly, more respectful. It's about choosing words that build bridges with people instead of putting up walls. And this chart shows just how straightforward this can be. It's not rocket science. Instead of mankind, why not say humankind? Instead of manpower, let's say workforce, or firefighter instead of fireman. See? These are just better words. They're more accurate because they reflect the reality that people of all genders are part of the whole picture. It's just an upgrade to clearer language.
So it all comes down to being a little more thoughtful, a little more intentional with our words. Use gender-neutral job titles. Make an effort to use people's chosen pronouns. It means the world to them. And hey, using they when you don't know someone's gender, it's super common now and really helpful. But honestly, the golden rule is the simplest one. If you're not sure, just ask. Politely. That small, simple question shows more respect than anything else.
All right, let's take a step back and look at the big picture. We've walked through this incredible map, right? 6 stages all the way from denial to integration. And the most important thing to remember is that this is not some kind of ladder you have to climb to the top. It's not a test. It's a lifelong journey of learning and growing. And honestly, we all find ourselves at different points on this map, depending on the day and the situation. And that brings it all back to you, looking at this map and thinking about this toolkit. Where do you feel like you are on this journey right now? And even more important than that, what's just one thing, one small step you can take to move forward? Maybe it's just paying more attention to a different communication style or trying out one of those inclusive words we talked about. Whatever it is, the whole journey starts with that first little step. So, what's yours going to be?